ROVE. I wrote this, I lived this. May, is it May? Perhaps it is April, rather, or mid-August. But it is, in my humble opinion, with today being a Tuesday, that today feels most closely akin to early February. I've lost track. How bothersome of them, the months. They never stay around long enough for us to get to know each other. They come and then hurry out of the way for the next one, only for that fellow to disappear off, as did the last. Never consistent in their attire each year, and always trying to trick my mind into thinking they'll be back a little longer next time to linger with me. It is a mighty fine shame. We could spend more such lovely and wonderful hours with each other. Oh, if only each was at least 20 days longer. But it'll take the blessing of at least knowing their names and recognizing each one's unique perfume. For that much, they've let me have. Today definitely smells like early February, now that I think about it. How silly of me. Bah, May, April, August. I shouldn't wonder if I have offended them for the misunderstanding. Now I'll have to be extra careful not to confuse them for each other again, lest they shorten their already brief visit to my home. Whispers of grey and fluffy topped valley grasses rush past me as the sweeping winds gather them together in mighty flowing waves, their voices heaving together into one heavily breathed chorus. Winds. Winds whose names no man can pronounce, only feel and come to a quiet understanding of, if one sits as long as I have. If one has sat as I in the midst of their journeys, on a log or rock or bench somewhere, they'll give you their names willingly too, playing them on whatever instruments at hand that may be used to communicate, through tree branches, prairie brush, skirting across lake tops, like a child running their hand through the water, mountain pastures, gorges and canyons wide and looming, yes, yes, one may learn their names, feel them. One can come to understand them without being able to put it into words within the mind's eye. It is a vivid abstract blur in the heart and felt in the soul. I know these winds today, they come from blue mountain ranges in the distance. Unlike the months, the winds linger much longer and let me well in them enough to learn their ruth and mirth. My dear invisible friends, how I envy your freedom to journey so. There is a path I tread today, perfect for my liking, and one I haven't meandered in a while. Something declared, we feel like it, and therefore must do, and sense reminded. Dress warm, the chill mustn't prevent you from today's venture. They're quite like an unruly child, and their supporting, proud mother, those two chatting off in my weary head. I am a good many a mile away from my little home, tucked amongst a spruce and cedar tree line. Out here in the valley, there are the frozen poplar groves, all solemn-like, almost perfectly the same, save for the occasional aspen mingled in their midst. Noise. There is little but welcome noise. My boots scuff the ground and scatter loose pebbles and debris. A step here cracks an iced-over puddle where the water couldn't hide its face from the frost in time. A step there breaks apart a clump of frozen weeds. At the sound of the scream of a lone bugle of a bull, I paused. Its shrill tones are beautiful and haunting. I thought the rut ended. Odd. The chill doesn't affect me much. I loyally wear my scarf around my neck, and a heavy green wool coat that I've had for most of my years encumbers my shoulders, perfect for a walk like today. And I have my hat. How well it protects my much-valued ears. I occasionally stop and peer around myself in childlike wonder. Snowflakes have begun to flutter to the ground, and it feels as if a hush of sorts has crept into the land under my feet. A reckoning, or something like that. I'm not sure what kind, But that's how it feels, this hush. Like a reckoning, or maybe rather, a calming, preparing, a kneeling. It's one of those blurred emotive feelings that one cannot quite put into simple man's words. Oh, if only it was common practice to talk like the wind. Then maybe there would be a word, a sign, or a tune with which one could use to express this sort of experience to another. I count myself among the luckiest on earth to not have to fiddle with such conundrums, as I've no soul other than myself to convey such to. It's a simple way of life. I only need to understand, not be understood. For the wind never asks me so much as my name, and the months never shall well in me. The path fades in and out of the grasses like a winding snake, leading me onward and down between miniature hills, hills dressed in Indian paintbrush and dead larkspur, then around great heavily textured mounds of lichened stone and earth. A plume of grey fog surrounds and encapsulates the beauty of the land within its fold, and I found myself wishing it would grow only thicker. To my dim delight, it steadily did. How quiet things had become. I guess the winds had found their escape from my valley, departing and leaving me with the peace of the snow. And fog, good conditions for a walk. Like little dancing fairies, white particles swirl before and cleave to my face and clothes. Some land perfectly on my lashes, adding a twinkle to my vision, while others, my scarf, standing out a brilliant white against the scarlet, only to dissolve into a tiny bead of water under my breath. Gone. Fragile little things snowflakes are. I see something of great importance to me. Off to the right and not far off lies a mound of stones. I carefully approach it, removing my hat and crouching down. The mound had been put together with thought, a labor of love. Not just any stones had been used, nay, a few buckets worth of lava stones were brought up from the river running through the valley, by my doing. Pinkish reddish beauties, marbled and solid, smooth and covered in deep pores and holes. At the end of the path there is a shoreline along the river bank overflowing with them. It has been a long time since I've come here. I remember why I stopped taking this trail. "Hey," I whispered. The frost clung to my hand as I ran my palm over the largest rock at the head. I laughed gently. "It's a beautiful day today, isn't it?" My words condensed like a cloud into the air and seemed to mock me, dissipating into the sky and out of my departed friend's reach. An old sensation sharply penetrated my heart. Holes well bored take a nail quite well. Wiping my face with the hat, I picked myself up and stepped back to the path once more. The feelings then collapsed into some old recess of my chest, leaving me feeling weary and my face hot. "Have a good day yourself, friend," I said softly, something of a smile on my mouth. There is more to today that I haven't seen yet, and parting ways with an old friend isn't so bad. They needed time to rest from life. I can hardly blame them for doing so. I just wish they'd waited for me. No, I don't wish they waited for me. I will be all right. The winds always come back for me to well in, the months even so in their own way too, whatever they lack. I need not embitter their company with the wishes of false hopes and trusts I cannot afford to spend. They bring me peace enough. Why would I want to be understood? Even more so heavily falls the snow in cascades of cloudy white. The fog mingles so thickly with it, I dare not remove my eyes from the path, lest I wander into some unknown field of the valley, never to be discovered nor missed. Honestly, it's not such a terrible thought. I hold nothing against the natural course of decomposing in the arms of the outdoors, and at the wildlife's mercy. But I'd like to complete my walk first, at least. There's the risk of hypothermia too, which is manageable with proper attention to detail. The hat gets pulled lower over my head, and the scarf a little higher up my neck. Too many fall victim to faulty self-delusions in confidence and vigor, just to freeze to death in the end like the rest their naive souls, or ones whose straw was just short of the draw, and their wisdom could do naught to stop the cold from claiming their being. In my mind, the only thing one can control is one's self, and where one decides to risk it. Sure, I could stay inside forever and stay warm, but I'd never risk seeing more than the enclosure of my house's walls. I would rather risk never returning to safety than to say I never got cold doing something worth trying, worth seeing, worth working to get to, worth feeling, worth welling in for however long the circumstances allowed, worth something, to be worth something to someone. Yes, it is worth it to me, to enter into the landscapes and wander until the land has swallowed my footprints like a beast, eager to feast upon the empty space I share with it. How else, then, could I have ever gotten to meet the winds I've come to understand so? Granted, they don't let me convey much back, but one takes in the company one can find to ease the burden of living. Perhaps, in a way, I am to the lands as the winds have been to me. I wonder what name its ruthless heart has come to know me by. Would I give my name willingly if I remembered it? Cramps in my feet send pins and needles of pain up my legs. Or if I too have become as the months a visitor, who never wells in its host, leaving nothing more than the cold ache of longing for something in its soil as the only evidence I was ever here as the months have in my heart. How nice it is to still be able to comprehend an another, non-reciprocating though they are. That is okay for me. How nice it is to have become an another. The wind never asks my name, and the months never shall well in me, yet I crave nothing outside of what they supply. I am a content soul. Since when did life become a burden? Why do I so desire to be understood? Am not worth understanding? I wish I had been in the mind earlier today to make a thermos of coffee or tea. The warmth would be most welcome within my chest. Not that I need warmth to ease the cold. No. The valley seems colder. No, but it sure would be a comfort. I hear the river. The sound of slow pulsating waters is soothing, and it is just acres around a bend, down and out of sight. How good it will be to rest! The thought makes me giddy. The snow and fog have let up, exposing the ruins of an abandoned homestead the left of me. All that is left is a rotting cabin tucked into the side of a steeply upwards sloping hill. How still it sits there. One's eyes are naturally drawn to it, for broken wooden fence beams line the ground here from this area of the trail and wind up to where the cabin resides in a haggard line. Termites and age have nearly destroyed all the beams in its roof, but a few still do stand, all symptomatic of time's passage and lack of care. What a pretty sight that old homestead is, abandoned and left to the whims of the elements. I remember being a little child and growing up in a sturdy house before I took off for this valley in peace. It was a place where I thought sanctuary existed. To my naive credit, at times, it did seem too. Contentedness can create a sanctuary where there is none, a stifling, nay, an encouragement of happiness, my own and true treasure. Frostbite took our fingers, got my hands black to the bone. I looked down and breathed a hot breath into them, relief filling my heart as the heat of moist air clings between my fingers. The sparkle of the light on the fence posts attracts my eye. I wonder if our home, too, still stands as this old homestead does. An empty shell where children once ran through the kitchen with bare, dirty feet and rosy noses, where a mother perhaps could be found preparing something warm and delightful in the oven, with father not far off behind her apron strings, trying to steal a kiss from her mouth and a morsel from her hard work, where maybe a family once gathered in the living room by a fire to read stories, share gentle affections, and exchange beautiful words. I frowned, kicking a stone from my way. Oh, winds, blow the old homestead down already, or are you too cowardly to try? I feel myself whispering. No, no, go ahead and keep your memories. Memories of softly stolen kisses, laughter, warmth and joy. Keep every dust particle of the footsteps of those who once dwelt in you. No one else preserves them so dearly. How you cling so to whatever it is that you should still stand under the elements and time. Why should I wish for you to fall, dear homestead? What torments me? No, it's just a house. Keep walking. I am content. I fell long ago. I burn with anger. The snow has built up a thick alabaster shell over the ground, softly crunching under my soles. A large grove of poplar and junipers stand tall on either side of the way forward, gowned in dresses finer than silk, and more extravagant than the finest hand-woven lace of snow and frost. The sight of them takes my breath away. Fog hangs heavily over their heads, and swallows the air above me as I enter their stoic company. I wouldn't trade what little solace I've gotten to experience here for anything. This valley is beautiful, with teeth sharper than steel in its mouth, and a knowing more piercing than the cold. I inhaled deeply. It shall devour me whole one day, no doubt. But I am not of the mind to fret about that. There is such a warm and bittersweet comfort in being sure of what I know is inevitable through chosen circumstances. Comfort. A laugh escapes my numb lips, piercing the stillness with a pseudo-vibrant tone. Suddenly a response came, that of a raven's deep chortle above my head from a tall poplar. I stopped to peer up at the chap and called out, "Foolish you are, don't you see there is no joke?" The fellow ignored my comment with a ruffling of his inky feathers. "You have deceived yourself of my true countenance, dark stranger. Do you not know of anguished laughter?" I watched him for a moment, how he sat perched with his wings folded tightly against his body, a clump of snow stuck crisply to the crest of his beak. I could feel myself clenching and unclenching my jaw. Shared laughter between two who know the other, that is a lonely man's conceited dream. Dear bird, I neither know you, nor you I— The raven interrupted with a low gurgle. Then another responded. This new fellow landed on the limb next to the first. I continued, my voice now quivering uncontrollably. Dear bird, the laughter of one unknown is of the plight of deep pain. I reached for a wad of snow and shouted, To join in with such is to mock my pain, for you have no desire to know me. I threw the snowball. It burst into fine dust long before it reached them, but did the trick of spooking the birds off. There was the sound of thick black wings beating wildly. How the ice and snow fell from branches in the bird's wake, leaving me alone in a satisfactory stillness once more, of winds and snow gently existing around me, comfortably so. Comfort, never a word more full of fleeting and longing. How foolish of me to trust it, to desire it. Yet even here I have manifested it so, and in my contented state become exactly that, comfortable. Comfortable with what I am familiar with, comfortable with being content. A long sigh drew from my lungs. Admit it, I whispered. Reddened, shivering hands burrowed deep into my pockets. Admit what? Despite the cold, heat rose up my neck and through my face like a summer fever. A deep ache in my torso wrenched and twisted with every picture and thought that came to mind with a heavy weight that seemed to pull my inmost being apart. No. What good is the grief of a soul alone? Their contentment is for none but themselves to ensure, and I am a content soul. I need not tend to the foolish desires of a wound. I don't need this. Foolish? Cries a voice. I am content, I croak. A tear slipped from my eye. Your cries were ignored and abused. You never truly chose silence. My pace quickened, though the way grew muddier and more overtaken with snow, making it difficult to maintain steady footing. I wanted to see that damn river. Every word in my mind now formed at great cost to my heart. The weights of each ached beyond description, and I wanted it to cease. Yet they came. Oh, how long has our soul been in such a wretched state? Tears welled so thickly that it was hard to see, despite a dirty-sleeved attempt at rubbing them away. There's so much— No, I cut off with a wail. Fear. There is so much fear in our eyes. Those words churned in my stomach like spoiled meat. Every another who offered comfort, their mouths filled with hidden malice. My body began to shake uncontrollably. Don't let it devour us. I sped forwards hard as I could, letting all caution and sense leave my feet. Let it not devour us. Came the distant scream of my own voice. It screamed somewhere in the wilderness. Branches cracked under my weight and my boots thudded hard. I was tripping and sliding this way and that. Foolish you are, I cried out. You are trying to steal my happiness. These words were met with a quiet and gentler voice. I just want what I do not believe I am worth having. I stumbled out of the trail into the open air once more, crumbling into a heap on the river's edge. The sound of the waters pulsating filled my head and mingled with that of my pounding chest. What is my heart's name? Slipped the question from my tongue in a faint breath. There was no color more vibrant than gray, no single sound. All had become one noise, and it overwhelmed my ears, heart, and inmost being. My senses numbed from being able to distinguish any single sensation. Worthless, answered myself. Noise. The sound of fists slamming hard into the gravel and ice. A weeping hopelessness fills the space between sky and earth, devoured into nothingness as vacant as wind and fleeting as February. I have left too much, left so much, much. I thought I would be content in this place, but I have been alone too long with my pain, and now it has devoured the safety of everything I have fought to find safety in. This place, the empty grey. The cold nipped harshly at the tears forming on my cheeks, stinging the air deep within my bellowing lungs. I have filled the empty grey to the brim with my thoughts, and they no longer comfort me, and my heart can evade my being no longer. It has found itself again in my chest between the dissonances of self, begging for a change. Have settled my disputes and affairs with life in a contract with death. My shoes belong to a cadaver whose longing has become too costly a desire to carry in unfulfillment. I am a fool who isn't happy. See? I laugh weakly. I sat and listened to the winds until I forgot the sound of my own breath. God, I'm in a wretched state. On knees, quivering and weak, I sat there on the bank of the river silently, waiting for the presence of mind to return between stiff, short breaths that further ached me within. I let my eyes gaze unfocused into the waters rolling past. Remaining there sat, yet already I had been swept away in numbness. For a time, My mind followed its flow away from myself with the ripples. But slowly I felt myself returning once more to being on the shore, painfully aware of the surroundings and my body. I raised a hand to wipe my eyes dry, and winced when bits of embedded gravel broke free off the side of my hand, leaving little bright pink pockmarks and small cuts. I could barely feel the sting of them through the shaking and cold. My ears tickled with the winds gently brushing past, making a dull, high-pitched wheeze sound as they whistled off of my hat and hair. With a sigh, I finally worked myself upright and stumbled my way to the left with the river's current. There is more to today that I have not yet seen, and I'd like to finish this walk. Dusk began to settle in. Any remaining light from the heavens turned a heavy dark blue that weighed on the shoulders and reflected off the stark white snow, creating a near dark yet well-lit cold wildland, hearkening the soul's eye to become lost within it and feel its restless haze. I still prodded along close to the river, walking beyond what I knew from previous explorations throughout past excursions. My feet obeyed me like clockwork, but trembled with exhaustion. I was ready to walk the whole night. I knew that I could. I have done so before in a worse state of being. Except something feels different about this time. It's that I don't think I'm going to be walking much longer. Don't let it devour us. I pulled my coat more tightly around myself for warmth. The cold was beginning to catch up to me and claim its catch. The winds wrapped it even closer to my bones mercilessly. What can I say? I never have embittered the wind's company. I shouldn't start now. Hell, I'm glad they've finally started to pay me mind, I laughed, teeth chattering. Tears welled and rolled off my face in icy beads. I've no one to blame but myself. I deserve no better. I'm blind to what others have seen in me to deem me as shameful, unlovable, and there's been something wrong with me for never understanding what that exactly is. Maybe the simple fact that I have always felt misunderstood is it. Out of my peripheral vision, a movement attracted me to the right. Barely making out the details, I saw a single, tall, dark and tawny creature emerging from the tree line into an unbroken slate of snow by the bank. My body and mind too exhausted to run or muster any fight, I remained a frozen statue of woe. As it drew nearer, its identity became less a mystery to me. An elk bull was trotting my way. His antlers arched high into the air like an ivory rainbow over his protruding spine. I counted 8 points even. His crown glistened at the tips closest to the sky. His muscles rippled underneath a patchy hide, and there was that of a long, bare scar which marred the length of his back from shoulder to rump. His chest was likewise a mat of scarred skin and gangrenous tissues exposed to the air. He slowly shifted his weight onto one foot after the other, his feet ploughing straight through the snow like warmed butter. Shall I meet my end to an herbivore? Perhaps he shall trample or impale me. Maybe he'll walk straight past as proper strangers should. The bull stopped short of me by 10 paces and faced the water's edge, lowering his brown head carefully to take a drink. To my dismay, he then lifted his head up and peered at me with the side of his face, directly in my eyes with his big amber one. His stare held a numinous sort of gentleness, one of knowing, feral-seeking, soul-breaking thought. "Behold, I have come near," said the bull. I felt my skin prickle, not from the cold. "I wish you would leave," I murmured. "Those eyes betray you. You know you have long drowned me out." He took a confident step towards me, and I flinched. Grabbing a wrist with my nails hard, so hard that skin broke, and fresh blood trickled down my hand, I weakly shouted, "What's it like, welling in the eyes of a wretched soul? Kin, oh kin, we ache so from being apart. The bull continued towards me with a loud bellow. A canopy of vapor surrounded us with a thick grey fog of his breath. With a shake of his antlers, he lowered his nose to my level. Sound. The sound of knees landing into the snow, angry weeping. See the reasons why I despise myself? Just run me through. End an unlovable, broken coward. I hid my face and waited for the bull to trample or gore his waiting victim. I listened to steady hoofbeats, softly stepping, until they stopped right before me. Hot breaths filled the inner collar of my neck, clinging to me with moist coolness. My soul whimpered at his touch. He steadily did this, dragging his nose across my neck and heavily breathing, until I hesitantly uncurled myself enough to peer up at him. How he towered overhead. His demeanor drew me back into looking in his eyes once more. This time I could make out the details in them, and in far more intensity I could hear his voice. Swallowing hard, I slowly let myself get lost in them. "Don't look away," said the bull. Choking down a sob, I nodded. "I need you." I met his eyes unwaveringly. His soul bled into mine in the still yet living loneliness of the land itself. I felt the immense heat of something like two liquid metals coming back together within my being, too intense to desire, yet too familiar to turn away. I allowed it to penetrate the hardest crevices of my heart. "It hurts," I whispered. "You know this feeling. I am returning it to you. I don't think I can bear it. Kin." My kin. Breathe. A great heaviness in my chest became a terrible cage over my lungs, as wave after wave of horror mixed with a strange ecstasy assailed my senses. I could see myself within his eyes. Those terrible, honest eyes. I could hear our heartbeat pounding together as one within his gaunt frame. Kneeled down and shaking so, I lifted up my hands and delicately caressed his face, tracing the lines down his nose and the hollow spaces below his piercing antlers. I tentatively placed my fingers nearer to his jowls on either side of the jawline. "There is yet another oddity about you, dear beast, familiar and terrible." As I said this, wincing, I lifted up the lips around his teeth, exposing sharp and rotting yellow canines within the bull's mouth. "Kin, oh kin," said the bull, in a long gurgling hiss. A shiver ran up my back. I ran my fingers over each of the wet, glinting teeth, remembering, I never wanted to become that. Guilt tore through me like icy knives. Chaos, kindred, fervent, unsatiated. "What is your heart's name?" I demanded. The bull's face took on the musculature of a smile, his wolf-like canines peeking through, humorless and barren of mirth. "Hunger." "A hopeless burden," I whispered, pulling myself away from the bull. "Not hopeless," he snorted indignantly. "Empty. I feel hollow. Why did you come to me? To kill me with sorrow?" Without another word, he focused his gaze from searching me mercilessly to the river. I too mournfully looked to the dark, bubbling waters. He screamed, a wide and high-pitched bugle, as long as his breath could draw out and piercing as a shattering mirror in the grey sloom. He took a couple steps into the water, pausing to glance back at me, his eyes tender, terrible. He then strode into the depths of the river, like a sinking ship. His scrawny legs parted the waters like two steel rods, stirring up massive white foamy wakes. "Where are you going?" I called out, my heart in my mouth. I watched helplessly as he strode depths past his knees, past his belly, past his shoulders, until his antlers were all that poked out from the dark water's surface. I pleaded and begged him to come back to the shoreline, but the bull responded to none of it. I watched the beast struggle against the current. I stood up and ran down the shoreline as he bobbed up and down below the surface, his nose sending out giant puffs of fog like a bellowing steamship. "Come this way." But he did not swim back to me. I watched his body dip below again and sink weakly between the rapids and hit sharply against boulders. But a few moments later, I saw his antlers floating downstream, and I sank to my knees in defeat. Who am I to blame the poor fellow? He was suffering. Who am I to deserve even his company? A few minutes passed by. Noise. A blessed noise. Could it be? Cries my heart. There came a calf's bleating from the opposing bank not far down, to which I strained my eyes to get a good look. Lo, I could scarce believe it, but there it was emerging from the waters, its back dappled with spots and rearing its soaked russet head to call out, turning to look at me from its side of the river. It couldn't be. Awestruck, I saw along the calf's back that there ran a long white mark where the bull's scar once was. I understood then what he had done, what he was showing me. With a smile spread across my lips, a peaceful stillness settled in me. Have I lost all of my wisest senses? I almost sang, my eyes turning to the river. By now the snow had stopped completely and night had fallen. A veil of light behind the clouds illuminated the snow gently and highlighted ripples in the water in silver pale light. Tears streaming down my still face, I looked up to the sky and lifted up my palms. How good it will be to rest. I stood for a long time at the river's edge, waiting out waves of anxiety and terror, and taking in how cold I already felt. I've lost the will today to go back to what I have made my home. Damn the wind and damn the months. For whatever company one may find to ease the burden of living, my mind's torment has brought me to reckoning with reality, and I am frightened that I have grown so determined to lose myself entirely in pursuit of proving I was deserving of this pain in the first place. A deep inhale released the tension in my shoulders, and I felt compelled to stoop at the water's edge, allowing myself to well in its calm churning. "Tell me this, that I may know you," I said through chattering teeth. "You'll have an answer," replied the river in its speech. "Your name, please." The river responded with great delight. "I am Love." Through choked breaths, my lungs groaned. "I thought I would never find you. Many have drank of me who thought the same. Would you like to know me, Rover, and be known? Can't I request to have just enough to leave this place?" I asked. I could feel the river's gaze fixated upon me. "If you don't give yourself up to me, let yourself go to my currents, then you'll never have me. I would not let you stay the same, and you will feel how it hurts to be seen. But it heals the inmost parts to be loved and known. You crave what you know is offered freely, but you don't feel worthy enough to have." Love interrupted itself with an outburst of gentle laughter, saying after, "Please, let go of the fear you've named comfort, weary rover." Heavy sobs shook my shoulders. How my heart clung to these strange words so. "I'm scared of what you did to the bull, so," I breathed. "You will feel a new hunger within you. I transform the old into new and satisfy your heart," giggled the river. "All right," the rover spoke. The pebbles and current threatened the stability of every step, but I pushed onwards. The waters quickly wrapped around my body and sucked the heat straight from the marrow of my bones, injecting through my being a viscous pain that burned like sulfur flames licking within me. I let myself go to its might. The current swept me along and pulled my head underneath, and I was unable to keep in my breath. The next few moments seemed like hours, enveloped in frigid darkness. All the teeth chattering and the burning sensation disappeared. My hat, scarf, and other clothes were caught up in its fold, just as the bull's antlers had been. That beautiful, terrible, all-encompassing fold, how it wrapped me in my nakedness. My heart was warmed, and I was accepted within its embrace fully and understood, though its sound was of a weakening heartbeat pounding in my ears. "Trust me, I have you," sang the river in its speech. My lungs burned for air. Dare I attempt to swim up to the bank ID, only be where I was before? Worse. "Do you promise to restore me?" asked the weary rover. "More than you could have ever hoped for," love swore. "Okay," said at last the weary rover, and with that drank deeply. Finn,